Hello class, welcome to video for lab number 2, installing Ubuntu 2004 in
VirtualBox. Before we can start working on this lab, I recommend, well, I not only I don't not necessarily recommend, but I want you to read the presentations first. Because I'm not going to cover 100% of what entails in the video, and for your own edification and so that you don't get lost while watching the video, I suggest that you pause the video now, go read these presentations, although I'm pretty sure we cover them during class, and then come back to the video so that it feels as a refresher. Now, I want to start with question number one, which it is enabling virtualization. In order for you to install Ubuntu in a virtual machine, you first need to enable virtualization. And once you have enabled virtualization, then you can install the hypervisor, which is VirtualBox, and then you can create virtual machines. Now, for people that are using macOS, if you're using an M1 MacBook, you will need to use a program called UTM, which is the only program that I have found so far that can virtualize Linux machines inside an M1 Mac. The program is, I think it has a free version and then a paid version, but you will have to research it on your own because I don't have an M1 Mac that I can use to create a video and play around with the software. I know that in the past some of my students have used it, but they have had mixed results with that program. So keep that in mind that you will probably struggle in class if you have an M1 Mac. For people who have an Intel Mac, make sure that you have at least 6 gigs of RAM. Just make sure that you meet the requirements that I'm requiring from the Windows users as well, which I'm gonna go through in a moment. And now, what are those requirements? Well, for virtualization, you need a good CPU, a good amount of RAM, and enough free space for at least 2 virtual machines, at least for my class, because we're going to at least have 2 virtual machines throughout the semester. This is what I recommend. A quad-core CPU, a 2.0, or a dual-core, also a 2.0. A dual-core is really not a good idea, but some dual-core CPU has a very high frequency, especially for Apple computers. So you might get by with that. But what I really recommend is at least a quad-core CPU because it's 2022. At least 6 gigabytes of RAM because 2 of those gigs we're gonna use it for the virtual machine, and at least 60 gigabytes of empty space or more. You can get by with 40, but 60 is what I recommend. If your computer meets or exceeds these requirements, then virtualization is probably enabled in your system. If it is not enabled in your system, then you will have to follow this guide over here to show you how to enable virtualization. This is only for Windows users. Mac computers have this installed already, have virtualization enabled already by default, so you don't have to worry about that. I'm gonna pause the video in a moment right now so that I can boot up a virtual machine and show you how you can tell if virtualization is enabled in your computer or not. Okay, so in your Windows computer, if you want to know if your computer is already ready for virtualization, what you can do is right click over here and then click on Task Manager. And then you can go to Performance, and then if you see something over here that says virtualization enabled, then you're good to go. If it doesn't say that, it's possible that your computer can virtualize, but it's just disabled. In that sense, follow the guide that I showed you before and then go and enable it. So let's move that out of the way. If you're having issues enabling virtualization or doing this lab, contact me right away. Don't wait until the last minute. And don't leave this lab for the last day. It's long, and I guarantee you that there are going to things that are going to not work exactly as they work for me. Because my computer is my computer, your computer is your computer. It's possible that there is some settings in your computer that are going to cause some friction into completing this lab successfully. So if you encounter issues and it is 20 minutes before submitting the lab and you reach out to me, there is a big possibility either I won't be available for whatever reason, or you won't have the time to troubleshoot the problem itself, which is going to cause you to miss out on the lab in particular. And as I mentioned before, there are no late submissions accepted, and you have to complete all the labs even if you miss them because they go in a sequential order. Okay, now once you have completed question number one, which requires no submission whatsoever because all you're doing is making sure your computer is good to go, we are going to then create a virtual machine. But before we can create a virtual machine, you need to install VirtualBox. And you do it by going into this page over here. Then you select Windows host if you're on a Windows computer, or OS X host if you are in a Mac OS computer. The installation of this package is like you install any other program. Just double click on the installer and click on next until you get to the end. And you need to also install the extension pack. And to install this one is the same thing. Just open the package, double click on the file, and it will install. Once you have done that, then you're gonna have something like this in your computer. VirtualBox, Oracle VirtualBox. Now, I want to show you something real quick, which is important. I'm going to pretend that I'm going to create a virtual machine. If you see this, only 32-bit systems available for you to virtualize, it means that virtualization is not enabled in your computer. Like you didn't do the previous step correctly, and you should stop and go back. And if you can't figure it out, then you reach out to me via Slack, and we can figure it out together. Why? The operating system we're going to install is 64 bits. If you create a machine that is 32 bits, this is not going to fly. That's it. Let's cancel that, let's close that, and I don't need this virtual machine on anymore, so we're going to turn it off. Once you have installed VirtualBox, we are going to create a virtual machine that meets this specification over here. This GIF over here walks you through the process that I'm doing in the video as well. Now, I have a video on how to install VirtualBox on Windows and on macOS. You can click on their respective links over here. It will take you to the YouTube channel, and you can watch them if you are struggling. Okay, now let's create a virtual machine that meets that specification. So I'm going to bring my VirtualBox instance over here, and I'm going to create a new. Okay, so before I do that, let me just move this on the side, bring this over here. Okay, so before you can start creating the VM, make sure that you download Ubuntu's 2004 installation ISO file. So click on this, which is going to take you straight to the download page, and click on download. The download, it will start automatically, and if you feel like you want to donate, you can donate over here, and it is this file over here. I have downloaded it already, so I don't need it. So we're going to close that, and let's click on new again here and come back over here. So name for the virtual machine. I prefer to name my virtual machine something that makes sense. For example, Ubuntu, because that's the operating system I'm installing, and CIS 106, because that's the course I'm teaching right now, and then the semester, which is Spring 22. Right, this makes my virtual machine very descriptive, and whenever I'm managing my VMs via the command line, I will know exactly which virtual machine I'm dealing with. The type, as long as you put the name of a distribution here correctly, will automatically change to Linux, and sometimes it will even match the version over here. We are working with Linux, and it's Ubuntu 64 bits. The machine folder over here is the location where your VMs are going to be stored. In my case, I have them set to a different hard drive, but you don't have to change that if you don't want to. You can also store virtual machines on an external hard drive. Just make sure that that external hard drive is connected to a 3.0 USB port, and that the hard drive is good and fast as well, so that you don't have any latency or connection problems. So I'm going to click on next. The amount of RAM that this computer is going to have is 2048 megabytes, which is 2 gigs. We're going to create a virtual disk now. Yes, it's going to be a VDI and dynamically allocated, and the size of the hard drive is going to be 50 gigabytes. Again, you can change it to 40 if you're low on space, and that will work, but 50 is my to-go. Let's click on create. Now let's bring this window back over here. There are a couple of settings we need to change here, and I'm going to move this on the side, and let's move this to the side over here. Let's click on settings. Let's move over here. So the first thing that we're going to change is that we're going to enable the clipboard, and we're going to set it to bidirectional. Description over here, a good idea is to put the name of the computer, the name of the virtual machine, right? So that would be the host name, and this is going to be called CIS 106. That's how I'm going to call it. And then the user, right? What is the username you're going to pick for that? In my case, I'm going to pick my Blackboard username, and over here type in the password that you're going to use. This is a notes area. It's good to put in here information that you don't want to forget, because especially the password, because if you forget the password, you might have to start all over again, and we don't want to do that. So I'm just going to choose something simple, because this is at the end of the day just a test, and this is a test environment. There is no need for anything, and it's in an isolated environment as well. So mirror this to your settings, for instance your own Blackboard username, and if you want to choose a simple password, great, but if you want to choose your own type of password, then by all means. We're not going to be using this encryption, so we can continue over here. We can leave this as is. We don't need a floppy disk, so we're going to get rid of this. You can leave this as is. The processor count, as per the instructions over here, is 2 cores, so we're gonna give 2 over here. This is the reason why you need at least a quad core CPU for this, because 2 of these cores are going to be used by your virtual machine. We're gonna leave accelerations as is, and we're gonna move to display. Bring this all the way to 128, and let's enable 3D acceleration. The rest can stay the same. We don't need to change this at all. In the storage, we're gonna click on the empty little disk over here, and this is our virtual DVD drive, where we are going to insert our DVD image of Ubuntu 2004, the ISO file, which has the installation of Ubuntu. In audio, we're gonna disable this because we really don't need an audio card on a virtual machine. We're not gonna be playing any audio there, so we don't need it. We're gonna leave the network as is. We're gonna leave that as is, and the rest is gonna stay as is. Click OK. Now, notice that this question does have a submission. You need to give me a screenshot of your virtual machine. So my suggestion to you is, on your computer, create a folder. For example, go to your documents, and over here, let me delete this because we don't need it. Create a folder in your documents called Lab 2 and place all your screenshots here. This is a way of working in an organized manner, and you will thank me later for that. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take a screenshot of all of this. I am in Linux, so my screenshot program is different than yours, but I trust the fact that you know how to take proper screenshots in your system. All we need is this area over here. That's all I need. But if you don't know how to do this with your default screenshot program, you can take a screenshot of the entire window if you so desire. As long as I can read all of this information over here, you get the grade. So let's save this, and let's call this question 2.1, and let's save it. Perfect. Now we're gonna move along to question number 3. In question number 3, we're going to install Ubuntu 2004. Here is a link to the presentation where all the steps are explained and laid out. Go read it if you need to. Let's move on. Be mindful that the screenshot that I require here is the screenshot of your last window just before you click on the restart button. If you miss this window, just give me a screenshot of the first boot of the system. So let's click on start over here. Let's bring this window to here, and we can minimize this because we don't need it anymore. I'm just gonna move this on the side. Okay, we're gonna click on install Ubuntu. This is almost done. Okay, let's choose our language, which is English, perfectly. Our default layout, which is English layout for our keyboard, continue. Normal installation, yes, and yes to third-party software. We're gonna erase disk and install Ubuntu because that's an empty virtual hard drive that we added to this computer, and click on continue. Yes, New York is correct. Your name. Now, here you provide your username, your whole name. So I'm gonna do Robert, and my username, which is RA Alberto and then sorry, my computer name, which is CIS 106, and then a username, which is RA Alberto, as in Blackboard, and then my password, ultra secure. And then we're gonna require my password to log in. Let's click on continue, and now you can go and grab a cup of coffee. I'm gonna go make some tea. When this wizard is done installing the system, I'm gonna unpause the video. Okay, now that the wizard has finished installing the operating system, we're gonna take a screenshot of this. And since this is question 3, we're gonna call this Q 3.1 and done. Now we're gonna go to question 4, but before we do that, we need to restart our system. Press enter, and the magic is popping up already. Okay, now let's sign in. Okay, so this over here is a welcome wizard. You're welcome to read everything that it says over there, but we're just gonna speed through this. And the first thing that we're gonna do is an update. So we're gonna click on show applications, and here we're gonna type software. Software update. This will launch our updater. There is a way of doing this via the command line as well, but we're gonna do these things graphically for the time being. There you go, software update, that's the right one. Now this is gonna look for any pending updates that we have, and it's gonna apply it and install them. We're gonna provide our password in a moment, and then we're gonna let the software updater do its thing. Click on install now. It's a very short update, 5.9 megabytes only. We provide our password over here. And once this wizard is done installing the updates, I'm gonna freeze the video now, freeze the recording now, and then I'll get back to you. I'll unfreeze it once the installation of the update. Okay, now that our computer is up to date, we're gonna click on OK. Then we're gonna go back here again, and we're gonna go to software. We're gonna click on software and updates, this icon over here, because we need to do this over here. First of all, we're going to go to other software. We're going to enable canonical partners so that we can have more software available for us to install from other developers. And we're going to click on updates. And let me move this around over here and automatically check for updates. We're going to change this to never for the time being. And that's about it. We can close this and click on reload. Now we're going to turn this virtual machine off, and we are going to take a snapshot. This is going to allow us to freeze our virtual machine on time so that if it breaks, we can just revert back to this state instead of starting all over again. So we're going to click on here and then just power off. Okay, now we're going to go back to our VirtualBox Virtual Machine Manager. Click on this icon over here and then click on snapshots. Click on take. This pop-up will appear. Provide your snapshot a description. I'm going to call this snapshot 1. Machine ready. Last update 0203. And click on OK. Now we're going to come back here again. Click on details and click on start. Let's move that out of the way. And we're gonna take a screenshot of this snapshot. We forgot to do that, so we can just go back over here, move this, click on a snapshot, and this is what I need a screenshot of. So let's take a screenshot of this. Let's click on save, and this is question 4.1. Okay, let's move that out of the way, and let's sign in. Okay, now question 5 is long. It's a lot of stuff that we're gonna do over here, but this is easy. Yeah, that's the best way to put it. This is actually easy. So what I want you to do is I want you to go to open Firefox in your virtual machine and go to cis106.com. This is gonna make our life much easier. So we're gonna go to cis106.com. We're going to scroll all the way down. Sorry, we're gonna go over here in the menu and scroll to lab number 2, and then we're gonna scroll all the way down to question 5. We are going to double click this line over here, which is going to allow us to select this command completely, and we're going to copy it to the clipboard. We're going to click on the menu over here and type the word terminal. We're going to run this command over here in our terminal application. Right click and paste and press enter. Now, this is going to install something called VirtualBox guest additions. It will allow us to go full screen and drag and drop files from our computer to our virtual machine. If I try to go full screen right now, notice that it stays small like this. And if I try to drag and drop anything from my computer to my virtual machine, it's just not going to work. So we want that functionality because we want to use this computer fully. So I'm gonna pause the recording now and wait until this installation is done. Be a little patient, please. Okay, now that this software has been installed, we will need to reboot the computer, and we can do it by simply typing the word reboot on the terminal, and that will restart the virtual machine. Okay, now I'm gonna sign in real quick. Okay, now notice what happens when I go full screen. Voila. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna go back here to Firefox. Let's close that. Let's put this on the side. And let's open our terminal window one more time. Okay, let's increase the font size in this. Perfect. Okay, now that we did this and we reboot the VM, we're gonna go full screen. We're going to disable animations so that we can get our machines to be a little bit speedier. All we have to do is select this command, paste it over here, press enter, and notice that our machine now is much faster than it was before. Now we're gonna use the software center, which is an equivalent of what you call an app store. Fun fact, the Linux ecosystem had app stores way before macOS and Windows and Android or iOS. And we're going to install VS Code. So we're gonna click over here. Actually, we don't have to do that. We can access it directly through here, which is called Ubuntu software, and we're gonna look for the application called VS Code, and we're going to install all these extensions just how we did in Windows. Right here, install, provide your password. Says we have 5 updates over here pending. and our software has been installed already. You can tell by the little green check mark over here. We can close this and we can look for VS Code. So let's type the word code. We have it right over here. Let's add it to our favorites so it stays over here since we're going to be using it all the time. Let's go full screen on this, and actually I'm just going to put it to the side. By the way, you can do this by pressing the Windows key on your keyboard and the left or right arrow key. It's a little shortcut. Okay, so we're going to look for these extensions. It's just like we did on Windows. And we're going to go start by live server. Install. Then we're going to install Markdown. Okay, so we need Markdown all-in-one. We need Markdown preview enhance. Markdown PDF. Markdown TOC. Markdown converter. Although that's part of all-in-one, so we don't really need to install anything there. PDF preview. And finally, code spell checker. Okay, now we can close VS Code because we have completed this. We're going to open it again later, but for the time being, we can leave it closed. Then we're going to open the terminal. Oops, sorry. We're going to open the terminal. We're going to remove a couple of softwares that we really don't need, like all those games that come preloaded with GNOME. We don't really need that in our development environment here, so we can just delete that. This command over here will take care of that for you. The process should be very, very fast because these programs are not that big anyway. So what I want you to do now is I want you to use the software center to install these programs over here, similar to how we did with VS Code. So open the software center and look for these applications and install them. So for instance, I opened the wrong thing. Just give me one quick second. No, LibreOffice, we don't want any tips from you. We want this guy here. Okay, so we're going to install Snapshot, which is our it's gonna be our preferred screenshot utility for doing all our assignments. Install VLC, Deluge, Genie, and Tilix. This you can do on your own. Okay, now we are going to install all of these applications over here that we are going to be using throughout the semester, and we want to get them done right out of the gate. So what I want you to do is double click on this line over here, copy and paste it in your terminal, which is going to take care of installing all of those programs for you. We're going to give that a second and I'll get back to you. I will unpause this video once we have, oh, this is important. When you get to this window over here, make sure that you use the tab key to move to the OK button and you press the space bar to answer yes. Use the arrow keys to move to yes and then press the space bar again, not enter. Okay, now I'm gonna let this installer finish installing all of these programs and then once it's done, I'll continue with the video. Okay, now that all this software has installed, we're gonna continue with this. Now, if you try to take a screenshot now with in Ubuntu, notice that I'm gonna press the print screen key on my keyboard, and a screenshot has been taken. But I cannot do much with it. Now, I prefer to use Snapshot for the following reason, because I'm gonna launch it from here real quick, for example. With Flameshot, I can select the specific areas of the window that I want in the simple click of a button. For example, if I only want this area, I can just select it and I can highlight something that I need from here. I can write in it if I want. I can save it. I can copy it to the clipboard to paste it somewhere else. I can upload it to the cloud. There is a lot that I can do with this. And I can also hide a specific area, a specific content that I don't want people to read or to see if it is sensitive. All of these features are good, and it is a very lightweight screenshot tool as well, and it's available on pretty much every Linux distribution you can think of, which is the reason why I prefer to use this one over the default screenshot tool that comes with Ubuntu. Now, it would be nice if we can just press print screen on the keyboard, and that allows us to do this. So what we're gonna do is that we're gonna run this command over here that will do exactly that. It will replace the current tool that we have in our system, and it's gonna replace it with Flameshot, so that every time we press the print screen key on the keyboard, it simply launches this. Okay. Now we're gonna set up Git and GitHub in our Ubuntu system because we no longer use Windows for nothing. So what we are gonna do is that we are going to first sign in into our GitHub account here in Firefox. So let's go to github.com. Okay. And we're gonna sign in. I don't need to save this password. And now that we are in our GitHub account, we're gonna go back to our instructions. Now, open the terminal one more time if you don't have it open, and let me clear the screen. And what we're gonna do is that we are going to set our username and our email in our Git instance over here in Ubuntu. So we're gonna right click and paste this, and what it says, your username, we are gonna delete this, and we are gonna put our username here. Mine is Linux Workshop 67, and then we're gonna do the same thing for our email. So we're gonna copy this and paste it over here, and my email address, which is linuxworkshop67@gmail.com. Press enter. Now we're gonna set up SSH authentication so that we can download and so that we can push changes to GitHub from our terminal without having to open a web browser and do the things that we did on Windows. So the first thing that we're gonna do is that we're gonna generate an keygen or an SSH key. So we're gonna copy this over here, paste it on your terminal, and replace this with your email address. Mine is linuxworkshop67@gmail.com. You can press enter over here, enter, enter. We're not going to be using a passphrase in the class because we are just, this is our playing around environment. In a real world scenario, you do want to set up a passphrase alongside with SSH authentication. But this is a playground that we have over here. We want to make things as straightforward as possible. Once you have done this, you're going to use this command over here to display, selected the wrong thing. You're gonna use this command over here to display your SSH key. Now, you don't do this on a video. You don't show this key to anybody. Obviously, I'm going to invalidate this key once the video is up, but just security tip out there. So you use this command, and what we're gonna do is that we're gonna copy this completely. Make sure you select the whole thing. Right click and click on copy. We're gonna leave it in the clipboard for now. So we're gonna go to GitHub, click on your icon over here, go to settings, go to SSH and GPG keys, and we're gonna click on new SSH key. Provide a title to this key. I'm gonna call mine Ubuntu VM Spring 22. And over here we're gonna paste the SSH key. Make sure that you delete that trailing space over there. Then click on add SSH key. Perfect. Now we're gonna go back to our instructions and we're gonna test our SSH connection by copying this, pasting it over here. Oh, sorry. Let's delete the read-only thing and paste over here. If the outcome that you get, oh, we need to type yes over here. Make sure you type the whole yes, not just Y. If you get this outcome over here, you have successfully authenticated, but GitHub does not provide shell access, you did everything correctly. If you didn't, trace back your steps because you did something wrong. Now we're gonna clone our GitHub repository. Cloning means we're gonna download our files from the internet that are stored in GitHub and we're gonna have them in our machine locally so that we can continue working on our files. So we're gonna clear our screen, and what we're gonna do is that you can type this. I put CD over here because I'm gonna explain what this command does probably next week or the week after when we start working on the terminal. And what I need you to do is copy this and let's paste it over here. Now let's break down this command. Git clone is gonna download our GitHub repository, which is this, right? These are our GitHub repositories, right? You only gonna have one here unless you have more projects. In my case, there are 3, but the one that I need is this one over here. Then notice that after that we have git at github.com colon and then your GitHub username here / your repository name here. So let's start by providing the name of our repository. Mine is called CIS-106-SP22. And then we're going to delete that. And right after the colon, we are going to provide our username. Linux Workshop 67. Now, let me zoom out a little because I want you to see how it looks. See, git clone, git at github.com, colon, your username / your repository name. Make sure you read it over at least 3 times so that you don't make a typo. Press enter and this is gonna download that file. Now I'm gonna close my terminal real quick and I'm gonna open my file manager and notice that in my home directory, in my home folder, I have my repository here. This exact same folder, these exact files are over here. What we're gonna do now is that we are going to organize these files over here so that it makes sense. And this is what I need you to do. So we're gonna create a folder called labs. All your labs are gonna go in there. We're gonna create a folder called final project. All your files related to the final project are gonna go there. And then we're gonna create one called weekly reports. And all your weekly reports go there. Everything related to your weekly reports go there. Now, I like to add another layer of organization. For instance, lab 0, all my files for lab 0 in there. Lab 1, all my files for lab 1, I'm going to put them in there. And lab 2, all my files for lab 2, I'm going to drop them in there. I'm going to do the same thing for the weekly reports. I'm going to do week 0, week 1, and week 2. Now, I'm going to copy all of this. And I'm going to first move it to labs. As a matter of fact, let's be smarter. So lab 2, I know, goes inside labs. Lab 1 goes in here, this goes in here, this goes in here, because you probably have weekly reports over here as well that you need to do. You know, in my case, I don't do weekly reports, so I have nothing in there because it's nothing for me to report. So okay, now in lab 1, this is for lab 1, this is for lab 1, this is for lab 2, which is this that I'm doing over here, right? But we're gonna delete this. At least I'm gonna delete it because I'm gonna recreate it again for you. And then we are going to move, okay, this is for lab 1 as well. This is for lab 0. This is for lab 1. This I'm gonna get rid of. This is for lab 1. This is for lab 1. This over here is lab 0. This is for lab 0 as well. And this over here is for lab 0. Perfect. Now, you have already some files for lab 2. They are located in your computer. So what I want to do is, I'm going to go out of full screen and I'm going to open a file manager. Now, I'm going to go to my documents folder, and this is where I have my files for lab 2. Now make sure that you're inside lab 2 over here, and copy the pictures that you took before from your local computer to your virtual machine by dragging and dropping them. If this drag and drop thing doesn't work in your computer, it's because you didn't do the first part of question 5 correctly. Okay, let me try that one more time. Sometimes this doesn't work. There you go. That's perfect. Wasn't picking it up correctly. So I'm gonna go back to full screen. Perfect. Now we are gonna open VS Code, and we're gonna open our repository. Our repository is this folder. So that's the folder that we're gonna open inside VS Code. So I'm gonna click over here. And I'm gonna click on open folder. And then I'm gonna click CIS 106 SP22 and click on OK. Yes, I trust the authors. Now we are gonna send these changes that we made to our repository to GitHub. We do it by doing these 3 commands one after each other. So I'm gonna click on terminal and new terminal. This opens a terminal window inside the folder, inside my repository, and I can type my commands here. So the first command is called git add period. This command means add all the changes that I have made to this folder to my Git. Press enter. All the changes have been added. Now they have been tracked. Now we are going to commit them. Commit is like saving, right? So we're gonna do git add commit. Sorry, git commit. Git commit -m, and we're gonna label this commit as something. We're gonna label this organized files, and we're gonna press enter. Now we're gonna push. Push means grab the changes that I made to my files and send them to GitHub. And all we have to do is type git push, and that's done. If you go to your repository over here and refresh the page, notice that things have been organized as they have been expected to. Now, it is one thing. Notice that these 2 folders are not here. At the moment they are empty. At least for my case they are empty. If I go in here, notice that all my files are in the place that I put them in my computer. Now we're gonna go back over here to our repository, and we're gonna leave it like that for now. Now, time to submit. What are you going to give me? Well, let's take a look at that. Let's go to labs. Let's go to lab 2. And over here, we're going to click on new file, and we're going to call this lab2.md. And we're going to create our Markdown file. So let's zoom in over here. We can minimize this. We don't need it that big, and we can minimize this for now. Let's do our font matter, name, your name, and then class CIS 106. Right? If you want to add the semester there, you're welcome to add it to semester spring 22. Okay, now lab 2 installing Ubuntu 2004. So we have a submission for question 2, right? And the submission is a picture. So we have Q2, and because my pictures are in the same folder as my file, all I have to do is provide the file name, q2.png. Perfect. Now we're gonna provide the answer for question 3, and we're gonna repeat the process, right? Q3, Q3.1. Perfect. Now we do the same thing for question 4. And we do Q4.1. Finally, let's provide a description, Q4, and let's save this file. Let's do a little preview. Take a look how our submission is looking like, and this is just perfect. Okay, now that you have done this, you know the deal. We need to convert this to PDF. So I saved the file first. Notice the file is saved, no white dot in the corner. Right click, export to PDF. PDF file is almost done converting. Perfect. Now we're gonna do another commit. Now, this is what we're gonna do. We are going to do git add period to save the changes, git commit minus n, to track the changes, git commit minus n, finished lab 2 to save these changes, and then we're gonna send them to GitHub with git push. If you go to your repository over here and go to labs, lab 2, notice your files are over here. We're gonna open our lab2.md file, and you are gonna give me this URL as your submission. So sign up to PCCC, put this as a text submission, and give me the PDF file and that URL. I do not need the Markdown file, only the PDF file and this URL over here to your file, and that's it. With that said, this video is over. If you have any questions, you let me know via Slack, obviously. Don't forget to turn off your virtual machine once you have submitted your lab. And this is important because a lot of people break their virtual machine because what they do is that they go and they click over here. This is like pressing the power on button in your computer, and this causes damage to your virtual machine, right? It might not be right away, it might be later on, it might never cause damage to your virtual machine, but I have seen instances where this actually breaks a virtual machine. So what you do is, remember, this is a virtual machine, but it behaves as a computer. So we are going to close this once you have submitted. This is all saved, so we're going to close this, close, and we're going to turn this computer off. Power off, power off, power off. Perfect. Now we completed lab 2. I'll see you in class.